The breaking chains, the fluorescent lights of cell block D, hummed their eternal drone as Officer Maya Rodriguez walked past rows of steel bars for what felt like the thousandth time, her polished boots echoing against concrete floors that had witnessed more broken dreams than she cared to count. She had trained herself not to look too closely at the women behind those bars, not to see their humanity, not to acknowledge the stories etched in their tired eyes, because in this place, compassion was a liability that could cost you everything. But on a Tuesday morning in late September, when the autumn rain drummed against the narrow windows high above the cell block, Maya made the mistake of meeting the gaze of inmate number 47829, a woman named Elena Vasquez, and in that single moment of connection, everything she thought she knew about survival within these walls began to crumble. Elena had been serving 3 years for a crime born of desperation, a choice made in the suffocating darkness of poverty when her younger sister needed medicine they couldn't afford, and the world had turned its back on two immigrant girls with nowhere left to turn. She carried that weight with a quiet dignity that set her apart from the hardness that prison cultivated in most inmates, a softness in her dark eyes that suggested she still believed in beauty despite everything this place tried to steal from her soul. Maya had noticed her before, of course, had seen her in the library reading poetry while others watched television, had observed the way she helped the older inmates with their letters home, had caught glimpses of her drawing on scraps of paper during recreation time, creating tiny worlds of color and hope in a place designed to drain both. But noticing was different from seeing, and on that rain-soaked Tuesday, when their eyes locked for 3 heartbeats too long, Maya truly saw her for the first time. And the recognition that passed between them was like lightning finding ground. The rules were absolute and unyielding. Fraternization between officers and inmates was grounds for immediate termination and potential criminal charges. The power dynamic made any relationship inherently problematic, exploitative, wrong in ways that Maya had been trained to understand from her first day at the academy. She had built her entire career on following the rules, on maintaining professional distance, on never allowing her personal feelings to compromise her judgment or her duty. Maya had grown up in a conservative family where her sexuality was something to be hidden, managed, carefully concealed behind layers of respectability and acceptable behavior, and becoming a corrections officer had felt like claiming some measure of control in a life where she had always felt powerless over who she was allowed to love. The uniform gave her authority, structure, a clear set of guidelines that told her exactly how to behave and what lines could never be crossed, and for 7 years she had worn that armor without question, without regret, without allowing herself to feel anything that might threaten the careful order she had constructed around her heart. But Elena was unraveling that order thread by careful thread, not through any deliberate seduction, but simply by existing in a way that made Maya remember what it felt like to be fully human. During cell checks, Maya found herself lingering a moment too long near Elena's bunk, stealing glances at the drawings taped to her wall, tiny portraits of hope rendered in stolen colored pencils, scenes of gardens and open skies that had no place in this concrete tomb. During meal distribution, their fingers would brush for fractions of seconds as Maya handed over trays, and those fleeting touches sent electricity through her body that made her hate herself, even as she craved the next accidental contact. They began exchanging words, brief and carefully neutral on the surface, but weighted with unspoken meaning that both of them recognized and feared. Elena would thank her for small kindnesses, for looking the other way when she borrowed an extra library book, for not reporting the contraband art supplies another inmate had smuggled to her. And in those thank yous, Maya heard all the loneliness and longing that mirrored her own trapped heart. The shift happened gradually and then all at once, the way forbidden things always do when people fight against them with everything. They have only to discover that the human heart recognizes no jurisdiction. Maya started volunteering for extra shifts on Elena's cell block, justifying it to herself and her supervisors as dedication to her job when in truth she was simply desperate for proximity to the one person who made her feel seen in ways she had never allowed herself to want. She began finding excuses to speak with Elena, asking about her appeals process, inquiring about her education programs, offering small encouragements that technically fell within the bounds of professional conduct but were delivered with an intensity of caring that betrayed everything she was supposed to keep locked away. Elena responded with careful hope, never pushing, never demanding, but making it clear through the warmth in her eyes and the softness in her voice that she felt it too, this impossible connection that was blooming in the most forbidden soil imaginable. The breaking point came on a night when Maya was working the late shift and found Elena crying silently in her cell, tears streaming down her face as she clutched a letter that had clearly delivered devastating news. Every regulation, every protocol, every rule that Maya had built her life around demanded that she walk away, that she report the distressed inmate to the mental health staff and maintain her professional distance. Instead, she found herself whispering through the bars, asking what was wrong, genuinely caring about the answer in ways that terrified her with their intensity. Elena's sister, the one she had committed her crime to save, had died in a car accident, and Elena wouldn't be allowed to attend the funeral, wouldn't be granted compassionate leave to say goodbye to the only family she had left in this world. The grief in Elena's voice when she spoke those words shattered something in Maya's carefully constructed defenses, and without thinking, without calculating the consequences, Maya reached through the bars and took Elena's hand, holding it while she cried, offering comfort that was absolutely forbidden but utterly necessary in that moment of shared humanity. That touch changed everything because it made real what had only been theoretical before, made physical the emotional connection they had been dancing around for months. They both knew they were crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. That holding hands in a darkened cell block at 2 a.m. while the other inmates slept was a betrayal of every professional boundary that existed for good, reasons they both understood. But in that moment, Maya couldn't bring herself to care about consequences when faced with Elena's raw pain, and Elena couldn't pretend that this officer was just another faceless representative of the system that had caged her. They began talking in whispered confessions, Maya sharing things about herself she had never told anyone, about the loneliness of living a half-truth life, about the family who barely spoke to her after she came out, about the way this job had become both her salvation and her prison. Elena spoke about her dreams deferred, about the art she wanted to create, about the guilt that haunted her for the choice that had seemed so clear in the moment but had cost her everything, about how hard it was to hold on to hope in a place designed to crush it. The weeks that followed were a study in controlled madness, a careful choreography of stolen moments and forbidden glances that both of them knew was unsustainable, but neither could stop. Maya found ways to be alone with Elena during cell checks, moments where they could talk quietly about everything and nothing, where Maya could slip Elena extra commissary items or drawing supplies, small acts of care that felt monumental in their intimacy. They began writing to each other, Elena leaving notes hidden in library books that Maya would find during her shifts, Maya responding with carefully worded letters that could be explained away as mentorship but read like love letters to anyone who understood the code. The risk grew with every interaction, every lingering look, every whispered conversation, in shadowed corners of the prison, where the cameras didn't quite reach. But the connection between them had grown beyond their ability to control or deny. The reality of their situation crushed down on them with increasing weight as the months passed, and their feelings deepened into something that could no longer be dismissed as attraction or loneliness or convenience. Maya began researching what would happen if their relationship was discovered, reading case law about officers who had lost their careers and their freedom for crossing the line with inmates, understanding fully that she was risking everything for something that might not even survive beyond these prison walls. Elena struggled with the knowledge that accepting Maya's affection meant putting her in danger, that every moment they spent together was a moment that could destroy Maya's life, that love in this context was inherently complicated by the power imbalance that could never be fully overcome no matter how genuine their feelings. They talked about ending it, about going back to being officer and inmate, with nothing between them but professional courtesy, but every attempt at distance lasted only until the next shift when they would see each other and remember why they had been willing to risk so much in the first place. The crisis came when another officer noticed the way Maya looked at Elena, made a comment in the break room about favoritism and inappropriate attachment that wasn't quite an accusation but carried the weight of a warning. Maya knew that she was being watched now, that any misstep would be documented and reported, that the walls were closing in on the secret they had been fighting so hard to protect. She avoided Elena for 2 weeks, forcing herself to stay away from her cell block, trading shifts to minimize contact, trying desperately to prove through her absence that there was nothing inappropriate happening. The separation was agony for both of them, Elena withdrawing into herself with a sadness that the other inmates noticed but couldn't understand, Maya functioning like an automaton through her shifts while something vital inside her slowly died from the deprivation of connection to the one person who had made her feel truly alive. If this story is touching your heart, if you believe in the power of love to transcend even the most impossible circumstances, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Your engagement helps these stories of hope and courage reach others who might be struggling with their own forbidden feelings or impossible situations. Thank you for being here with me on this journey. Maya realized that she had to make a choice, that living in this liminal space of longing and denial was destroying both of them more surely than any scandal could. She couldn't change the fact that she had fallen in love with an inmate, couldn't undo the months of connection and caring that had transformed her understanding of what mattered in life, couldn't go back to being the person who valued rules and regulations over the human heart beating behind them. But she could choose integrity over secrecy, could choose to step away from the power dynamic that made their relationship inherently problematic, could choose Elena's well-being over her own desperate need to be near her. Maya submitted her resignation from the Department of Corrections, citing personal reasons, accepting the shocked responses from her supervisors who had always seen her as a model officer, walking away from the career that had defined her adult life because staying meant either living a lie or dragging Elena into a scandal that would only make her incarceration harder. The last time Maya saw Elena as an officer, she broke protocol one final time, telling her through the bars during a quiet moment that she was leaving, that she couldn't be part of the system that kept them trapped in this impossible situation, that she would be waiting when Elena's sentence ended in 8 more months. Elena cried and told her not to throw away everything for someone like her, not to sacrifice her career and her stability for a love that might not survive in the real world, where they weren't trapped in the artificial intimacy of prison life. Maya smiled through her own tears and said that Elena had already given her something more valuable than her job, had shown her what it meant to truly see another person and be seen in return, had taught her that some things were worth more than safety and predictability, and the approval of people who had never understood her anyway. The months of separation were hard in different ways than the enforced distance had been, because now Maya was free but alone, working temporary jobs that paid her rent while she figured out what came next, attending therapy to process the ethical complexities of what she had done and what she felt, preparing herself for the possibility that Elena might choose to walk away when she was released, rather than continue something that had begun in such a problematic context. She wrote letters to Elena through official channels, carefully worded messages that spoke of her life on the outside and her hopes for the future, without making any demands or assumptions, giving Elena space to decide what she wanted without the weight of gratitude or obligation. Elena wrote back with equal care, sharing her own fears and hopes, talking about the art classes she had been taking through the prison education program, describing the murals she had been commissioned to paint in the common areas, holding on to the dream of a future that might include both freedom and love. Before I share the ending of Maya and Elena's story, I'd love to hear from you. Please comment below and tell me, do you believe that love can be genuine even when it begins in complicated circumstances? Have you ever had to choose between what was expected of you and what your heart truly wanted? Your stories matter, and sharing them helps build a community of understanding and support. When Elena walked out of the prison gates on a bright spring morning with 8 months of good behavior, reducing her sentence, Maya was waiting in the parking lot, holding a bouquet of wildflowers and wearing the most, genuine smile she had felt cross her face in almost a year. They stood looking at each other for a long moment, both suddenly shy and uncertain, now that the barriers between them had finally fallen away, both wondering if what they had felt inside those walls could translate to this wider world, with all its complications and judgments. Then Elena crossed the distance between them and took Maya's hand, the same way Maya had once reached through the bars to comfort her grief. And in that touch they both felt the truth that had sustained them through everything. Their love had been born in darkness, but it belonged to the light, had been forged in impossible circumstances, but was no less real for all its complications. And whatever came next would be built on a foundation of two people who had chosen to see each other fully and love what they found, despite every reason not to. They drove away from that prison together, not into some fairy tale ending, but into the messy, beautiful reality of building a life from scratch, facing the judgments of people who would never understand, working through the trauma and power dynamics that would require ongoing honesty and effort to navigate. Maya went back to school to become a social worker, channeling her understanding of the system into advocacy for the people trapped within it. Elena pursued her art with fierce dedication, creating pieces that spoke to the resilience of the human spirit and the possibility of transformation even in the darkest places. They built a home together slowly and carefully, learning each other in freedom the way they had learned each other in captivity, proving day by day that love that begins in impossible circumstances can still grow into something lasting and true when both people choose courage over fear and authenticity over easy answers. And on quiet evenings when the world felt heavy, they would hold hands the way they first had through those steel bars, and remember that some connections are strong enough to break any chain that tries to keep them apart.